Okay, we're going to do an interview here with the highest ranking instructor under Guro Nate Defensor in the Defensor Method of Filipino-Indonesian martial arts. He is the longest he's the longest training student and the highest ranking instructor under Guro Nate, and he's about to relocate and continue his retirement in North Carolina. So good luck and congratulations. So we just welcome. Thanks for consenting to do an interview.
My pleasure.
Okay. So we'll just start off with some questions. When and why did you start your martial arts or Eskrima training?
I started in 1982. It was a gift for my 30th birthday from my nephew, who was a student of Jack Soderbergh's. And there were Discovery Center classes back then. So he gave me 6 classes from Discovery Center in this obscure martial arts. He thought it was weird enough that I would be interested. And it turned out he was right.
And what appealed to you about getting into martial arts? Because you were not 18 at the time.
No, I was 30 at the time, and I was, let's say, kind of sloppy in my lifestyle, and and I was working a lot of hours, and I was not working out at all. And my nephew thought it'd be wise of me to find some kind of physical training in my life,
Okay. And what was your first impression? Because Filipino martial arts, Eskrima, is a little bit different than some of the other martial arts systems. Do you recall your first impressions?
Well, the only thing I'd had before that was Taekwondo, which was, like when I was 13 years old, hard style, old school. So this was completely different. And it was electrifying. It was exciting. And it was also fantastic amount of information for the first class. So we ran through so much material. Literally, we looked at each other at the end of the class and went, how am I ever going to remember this?
Okay, very good. So that was my next question. You were kind of overwhelmed by the end of the first class because not that many people, even today, or especially today, they're not that familiar with the Filipino martial arts. Sometimes I might try to reference it. You've seen the Jason Bourne movies, and I'll kind of reference it, so at least they have a little bit of a reference point to go by.
Well, yeah, relatively speaking, we have a lot of reference points now. Back then, there were 0,
right.
And there were practically no practitioners, and nobody had ever heard of it. So that is actually appealing to me. It was also because Nate was eager, and it was his first class on his own and so forth in a public venue. He wanted to give us a lot of information. He wanted to give us a lot of value, And so we were learning together, student and teacher, as this process progressed,
Okay, very good. And this was at the Degerberg Academy in Chicago.
Correct.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was basically the first. That was probably the first place in the Midwest where you could learn Filipino martial arts.
Yes, outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Yes.
And who was in Fort Wayne?
Al McLucky was in Fort Wayne with Mike and I.
With Mike and I. So Mike and I. Okay. Very good. But they had probably just started a short time before then too.
I don't know how long. Probably a couple of years.
Yeah,
at the time that seemed like a long time. Now it seems nothing.
Yeah. Okay. And. Well, what was the Eskrima training like back then, or even contrasted like how it is today?
Well, I think Nate calmed down. We had a very good group of initial students, and so maybe there was 10 of us or something like that, and 5 or 6 of us really took to it and started practicing on our own on the side, taking classes. We're like doing it every day. We were gung ho.
Okay. And then, so that was at Degerberg, and Nate just started teaching then. And when did the Defensor Method come into play?
I don't know when it translated. We were there at Degerberg for a while. One of the guys had a loft, and we started doing side classes, not a separate class, but an extension of our Degerberg class there, so we could just get more hours and more reps, and Nate would come in and give us more information. And we would practice on our own. Eventually, that became a dispute at the school we were in, and Nate broke off on his own.
Okay. Because you guys who were serious about it wanted to get more training in, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, we were doing it at that point 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah. Okay. I believe I don't have it handy, but I think I just put it into Google Drive that I've a flyer before I started with you guys from 1985, and that was one of the early dodgeball retreats at your house in Dodgeville, Wisconsin. So maybe Defensor Method was formalized at least by about 1985. Does that sound about right?
Well, remember, this is pre-internet.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know when exactly Defensor Method got coined.
Yeah.
But certainly by that time, Nate was on his own and teaching on his own. I had this place in Wisconsin. We started doing seminars up there as part of an extension of this.
Okay. And whose idea was that to do the Dodgeville summer retreats?
Well, I presume Nate and I don't remember specifically the conversation, but I do think we probably did it together. The notion that, it'd be fun to go out in the country and do it all weekend, Again, this was fairly rare and no one else was doing this. This was just something we came up on our own.
And what were I started attending retreats maybe around 97, 98. What were the early retreats in this mid to early 80s like?
Again, we had a very hardcore group of a small group of students, a dozen students, and we would, get there on Friday night. We'd talk until 3 in the morning. We'd get up at 9 o'clock, eat breakfast. We'd work out till 9 p.m., running the gauntlet, doing, sparring and all kinds of training. Sometimes we'd take a break and run out to the local park and jump in the lake because it was so hot. Everybody would crash down in the living room, and we'd tell stories all night, watch movies. Got very little sleep.
Well, that's not a bad way to kill off a weekend. And were there any reactions by your neighbors or anything else?
No, because I had no effective neighbors. There was, I guess, one reaction, a kind of racist reaction from one guy after the seminar once, where he mentioned something about all those brown-skinned guys you have up there on the hill one day. I was unaware. The guy lives 2 miles away down in the valley. Yeah. I was unaware he even knew.
Oh, okay. So it was just, it's rural Wisconsin, and it was a number of years ago. So
yes.
Okay. Okay. And so Guro Rich, you've been basically training in Eskrima since then.
Yes.
Okay. And have you also studied other martial arts?
Well, not to this extent, not as concentrated. I've taken seminars and other things, and I've taken things from other instructors that were, or I take seminars in Penchak or Muay Thai or in a center that we teach in a Wing Chun section, so I learn things that way, but not specifically, no.
And because there's hundreds of styles within Filipino martial arts, what is there a particular style that you kind of that you gravitate to, or that is kind of your fallback style?
Yeah, the Kabbalah Sarada style is definitely my backup. That was what we first studied back in the day. And that goes from the lineage of Angel to Micah and I to Al McLucky to Nate to me. And so that was what we first learned, and we studied it because we were doing 5 days a week. We could do it in detail. As Nate started introducing other more Kali style, more different kind of footwork styles, as he evolves himself as a martial artist, we study that too. But it's funny, when you get pressed, you tend to go back to those first lessons.
Right, you go back to your base. Did you just say that you were training 5 days a week?
Yeah.
Was that a class, or was that on your own?
No, we were doing these in classes. We would meet at each other's lofts. We would meet in backyards. We would do it everywhere.
Okay, very nice. Okay, interesting. And so you mentioned Mike and I, and Angel Caballos, of course, and Al McLucky. What were some other big names that you recall when you started in the early '80s?
Well, Danny Nasana was a huge influence. He was doing a lot of seminars in those days back at Daggerberg. And so I would take all of those that I could. And he would bring Rich Basilio with him sometimes, and Angel would come there, and Mike and I would come there, and Jimmy Tacosa came there. And so there was a lot of, but this is a concentration of a bunch of martial arts revolving around a very small area of the Philippines. So it was all Cebuano stuff, That later we got, the Cañetes came in more Cebuano stuff. Much later we got, information from like Guro Bong, who was teaching from other areas of the Philippines.
Okay, because a lot of styles that you were seeing, that they were more Visayan from the middle part of the Philippines.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. And the tradition in martial arts in general, especially Filipino martial arts, is to keep it a little bit hidden. It wasn't. it wasn't like that there was a big, sign, come and study in general. Wouldn't you say that was the tradition within Filipino martial arts?
Well, for some instructors it was, and some a lot so, and Nate was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
What I loved about Nate's class was that he had evolved from that sort of Bruce Lee Inosanto, systems where these guys came up in the early 70s. It was a radical time. Bruce Lee had, broken away from the Kung Fu rules and taught to other people, and the whole notion was all the information should be free. That was sort of the notion in general in the people we ran with, And so we gladly exchanged information with other arts, with other systems, with other styles. And we had learned that through those guys like Bruce Lee and Inosanto, who had started that. So to us, it was all we took on the mantra from Bruce Lee. Absorb what is useful, study lots of things, absorb what you can. That was the notion, and that sort of irreverence permeated the class. And we used to make jokes because we didn't bow, we didn't scrape, we didn't have a lot of tradition around that. And we would make, we would kid ourselves. In fact, we named the seminars the "You Bow to Me Baby" seminars, because one time Nate, in joking, said to one of his buddies, "Hey man, you bow to me, I'm the teacher." And he goes, "Hey man, no, you bow to me," And so from then on, that became the name of the seminars. That irritated some students from the outside, so would come to these seminars and find us less than disciplined by their notion.
So it was, in other words, it was more relaxed, maybe like a family atmosphere, as opposed to like a military style type of regimented type of martial arts.
We referred to it as club training. In that it wasn't a sanctified school with a set curriculum that went back 1,000 years in exactly the same way. Quite the opposite. It was something that evolved among a groups of people. It was expected to evolve further.
Very good. And what other martial, as comparison, what kind of other martial arts do you recall being popular at that time when you first started Eskrima?
Well, Taekwondo and Judo were out there a lot. There was just coming into being some Kung Fu, but you really had to be on the sort of 1% fringe to appreciate those things, because those were all small classes like ours were. Basically, the Judo, wrestling, and Taekwondo, ate up the commercial market.
Okay. And let's maybe move a little bit forward. What kind of trends do you see in martial arts or in Eskrima in particular over the years or more recently?
I see in many instructors that start out as club teachers, they become more and more regimented, because as instructors, it becomes useful to create something akin to a belt, curriculum in which is standardized so that people can process through it. Because in fact, students much prefer that. It's difficult, unless you're a very gung-ho student, to involve in an environment sometimes where you don't have goals in which you can set and move on. And so, that was not my way of thinking, but it was the way of thinking of a lot of people. And I understand why instructors want to do that. They want to make a living. If you're going to make a living, you got to give students what they want.
Right, and I say, I remember coming into the Defensor Method in 1997, and we had the curriculum for the white shirt test, but that was about it. And then I recall having meetings with all you guys around 1998 or so, and we put kind of more of a curriculum together where there was a progression,
right?
And without making too much of it, I think that there's something to be said for having a progression so that it's easy for the students to follow.
Yeah, and the process before that, they just had to know you. To become a JKD instructor, you had to know Danny, have done a bunch of seminars, but no fixed number of seminars. You didn't have to know a specific curriculum. You just had to sort of know your general martial arts, and he would have to know you well enough to know if you did. And so you'd have to have been around him. You had to know him, That changed over the years because there got to be so many students that he wouldn't get to know anybody. And then his instructors started, processing people, and Danny never met him. And I've talked to people who say they're JKD instructors who don't even know Danny Inosanto's name. I mean, it's
really
weird.
Okay, all right, well, that's kind of weird. Okay. And so you see that as one of the trends in Eskrima. It's got a little more definition. It's got a little more structure. Over the years? Okay, and I think we touched on this a little bit before. But how are Defensor Method classes, and we both attend classes, and Guro Nate's not always the head instructor. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's one of the other guys who started. A little more recently, but how do you see Defensor Method classes being a little bit different than maybe the early 80s?
Well, I don't know, because I never really liked teaching as much as I like being a student.
Okay.
Because as a teacher, you have to deal with a lot of beginners who aren't going to stick to it and don't love it like I did, And so you have to give them a finite piece of martial arts and say, here, chew on this and take it home. Come back when you get good and I'll give you more. When in fact, I want to just keep going, keep evolving. Like, not only can you do this, but what can you learn from that? From that, you can make the next thing. A lot of people don't like that, and so you have to teach them differently. Until you find those rare students, who are the ones who sort of percolate into white shirts or something like that, who like take the ball on their own and take off with it. So that's what happened. We all end up having to sort of stratify it, and then in some respects, we give less information than we have in our heads that way, because it takes years to download this stuff.
Right. And to develop the attributes and everything else like that. And I always thought in my mind, would it be safe to say that the dropout rate in martial arts is basically 99%, meaning that, you either kind of, it's like speaking French or any other language. Either you continue to do it or you don't. And for most people, except some of us, our guys, for whatever reason, we have our own reasons, but we more or less continue to do it throughout our lives for decades, and if you don't, then you're not really a martial artist.
Yeah, I think that being a martial artist is all about a life change. I agree with you completely. Yeah. And in that respect, that's where the art comes in, when we start to create. If people just want it as an exercise format, then it's doomed to fail, just like gym memberships are, and like treadmills in a living room. People just don't continue. It can't make you love it. You got to go ahead and love it. And if it's not that art, go study something else. I just encourage everybody to go study something, to be physical somehow.
Sure.
To find a physical outlet. Nowadays, with all the discussions about obesity and size and stuff, it's clear that people just don't work out as much as they ought. Now being a senior citizen, I can really appreciate how important it is to work out.
Yeah, sure. And now you worked and you taught in the Hyde Park area, and you taught Eskrima classes at the University of Chicago for many years. Is that correct? And what were those like?
Well, that was kind of fun, because I had these really, really bright students. I mean, my students were a collection of postdoctorates. Most of them in like astrophysics and cosmology, right? Really, really smart guys. And so on the theoretical level, they were whip fast. They could jump right to it. On sub-level, they were like nerdy, A couple of them advanced very quickly and were natural martial artists and natural fighters, And they were very good about studying. They learned and they remembered and they retained it and took it to the next level. So on that level, it was a gift to me. To be able to teach them. It was an extraordinary group of students.
Okay. And was there, if I can bring up maybe a student or two or an incident or two, was there a story you told me a while back about some gentlemen who came in who were kind of neo-Nazi, or they had tattoos that indicated that they were in favor of that particular ideology? And would you mind relating that story?
Okay, yes, I will be happy to. But our problem, I was caught in my own petard. Here's my problem. I don't want to turn any student away, because we believe in openness and we believe in teaching the world. And we used to work outside a lot. So these guys come along, they see us working outside in the midway over there, and they want to join in, and okay, I guess that's okay. I'm going to learn something. But I couldn't get over my own problem with teaching neo-Nazis. I don't want to arm them with the tools that I have to arm them with. And so I tended to be harsher with them than I might have been with a different student.
And how can I say, without digressing too much along the story, how did you know that they were neo-Nazis?
Well, one had a swastika tattooed on his neck. I mean,
that would be an indication.
That would be first hint, you know.
So what ended up happening with these guys?
Well, you know, to their credit, they were very respectful students, and they were very nice, and they, you know, followed all the rules. On the other hand, you know, we were doing a lot of, when we do falls and throws and stuff, we don't use mats. We're doing this on the grass and stuff, sometimes on the floor. And, you know, I would just tend to be a little more harsh with them than I might be with other beginning students.
Okay, so you put a little hurt on them, and then eventually what happened?
Eventually they went away.
Okay, all right.
Solved my problem for me. Because my next choice would be to have to ask them to leave. To just say, I don't want to give you these tools.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because God knows what they would do with them. And then there was another one of you. I believe it was one of your students who went to in Indonesia. What was it? And he tried to track down some good instructors. And what transpired with that?
Well, this man had a tremendous aptitude as a fighter and was eager to get in the ring and had really good hands, and he was really strong and fast. He trained with us, and he went to boxing training here at Nate's behest and so forth. Mm-hmm. So he graduates, goes off to Indonesia as a journalist, wants to track down the real pencak silat, can't find it in Jakarta. What he did find was modern pencak silat, mm-hmm. and he went into training and then into amateur competition with it. And modern pencak looks a lot like kickboxing to me, mm-hmm. and he thought it was too. Yeah. And he personally didn't like it very much because it wasn't the sort of killer stuff mm-hmm. that he had been learning from us. So he was disappointed that they mm-hmm. waterlogged but it was the ring. They had to waterlog
sure.
down.
So so at least in my mind, maybe it's a little bit akin to going to Europe today and looking for medieval type of swordsmanship, or going to Italy or France or Spain and trying to find that it existed at that time and place, but it doesn't exist so much in a vibrant form anymore, or it's hidden at least. Yeah,
I think it's good. I had another student who was a state champion Taekwondo guy, right? Very young, very strong, powerful guy. He's probably 6'2", 210 or something, super fit. He says he goes to Korea. He's a big gung-ho fan. This is before he's trained with us. And he says in Korea, it's just, it's no holds barred, full contact sparring all day long. There's no forms. There's no breaking them up by weight class. He says there's blood and teeth flying everywhere, He says, so of course what happens is the guys who become instructors are the big strong ones, mm-hmm. and the smaller weak ones can't compete. Mm-hmm. He said that's the way they do it there. Mm-hmm. When it came here, it changed, And probably Penchak changed that way too when it went from the country to the city.
Yeah, they toned it down for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. And just in general, how has martial arts helped you in your life?
Well, that's a large question.
Okay.
On the short side, I always viewed martial arts as a means, not so much to be able to kick ass, but a means to me getting over my sort of trepidation of walking down the street, worrying about the mm-hmm. violence of others, right? Mm-hmm. It did solve that problem. I don't worry about the violence of others. I don't worry about people assaulting me. And I went through a lot of that in my childhood, mm-hmm. where I got assaulted a lot and mugged and so forth. That went away, and that wasn't a specific goal, but it just faded away one day. I don't know what day, the fact that you have a discipline, and it's probably the first thing that I did in my life that was really good for me that I stuck to, because I was a wastrel young man. And so showing up every day, day and working out like that and getting physical exercise and camaraderie with my friends mm-hmm. and pursuing mm-hmm. a passion were all powerful influences on me. We had always taught in this school that it was not about, becoming the toughest guy in the world, but becoming a wholer person, becoming completed. Okay. And in that respect, it worked completely.
Okay, and just a couple of final questions, I say, because I know you have to get out to North Carolina at some point. But anyway, so it's helped you in life. Was there ever an occasion where you had to use, your martial arts?
Yeah. I never-
Besides the neo-Nazis, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one time some guys tried to mug me.
Yeah.
And I was fairly early on. I was practicing balisong a lot in those days.
Okay, balisong knife, yeah.
Yeah, I had a balisong on me. And these guys, I was coming out of a building downtown late at night, and it's deserted, and I'm in this little cul-de-sac of this building, and these two guys confront me. And I am totally confident that there's no way they can hurt me. And so I go through like this list of how much, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? What are my options? I have a lot of options.
Yeah.
And so I just pulled the balisong out and I did this set flexibility drill. We open and close on both hands. Their eyes bugged out like cartoon characters, and they went running down the streets. That is my application of martial arts.
Okay, very good. And just a final question: any advice for people interested in martial arts or Eskrima in general?
Well, just keep training. The goal is not to be a guru. The goal is to just keep training. The art is large enough and complex enough that you never finish. And so the process is the goal. It's not to get somewhere and stay there and become the biggest gun in the West. It is to become an old man who still does this Eskrima. I studied this art because I saw right away that old men could beat young men and survive in this art as compared to, say, boxing. And that's still true, that you can still progress, you can still train, you can still get benefits, even when you're like my age.
Okay. And what is your age?
I'm 64 now.
Okay, and you've been doing Eskrima for how many years?
34.
Okay, so that's a good chunk of time. Okay, and you had some experience with Taekwondo, but beyond that, I would say you're a little bit maybe of an anomaly, meaning that most of us, including myself, we usually start with another art, that we study, more or less seriously,
yes.
and then we typically progress to Eskrima because for a lot of reasons, Eskrima is not always as readily available, and a lot of us, not a lot of parents are going to let their 10-year-old, learn knife techniques. So a lot of us start in some of the other martial arts prior to that, and then we progress
right.
into So very good. All right. So with that, thanks very much for your insight and for memorializing this, so we have a record about Defensor Method and about the early years and about your philosophy, which is very helpful in terms of martial arts. And good luck in your continued retirement.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you. All right.